this video, I'll look at key ideas from Canti 31 to 33 of Dante's Inferno. And I'll look at the way Cormac McCarthy uses similar tropes and symbols in his novel, The Road. Firstly, I'll look at the way language can be a reflection of knowledge and understanding. In the Inferno, I'll look at Dante's use of violent imagery in depicting Italian politics, which reflects the pervasiveness of evil that he sees plaguing his world. While in The Road, I'll look at the way McCarthy uses truncated language and the disintegration of stories and literature to reflect the challenge of comprehending the end of the world. Next, I'll look at the trope of cannibalism in both texts, exploring the way it can symbolize two concerns for the composers. Firstly, the loss of individual humanity, and secondly, the erosion of society and neighbourly bonds. Finally, we'll look briefly at the setting of both texts, the winter landscape and the cold, barren, godless desolation of Circle 9 and Cormac McCarthy's dystopic world.
I fell, not into fire, but into a vast, frozen wasteland. The very center of hell.
To revise the location of Circle 9, you should look at the diagram that precedes Canto 32. In Canto 31, we learn that around the ice lake of Cocytus stand mythological giants, who Dante mistakes as high clustered towers, which is perhaps an allusion to the human pride and ambition that the giants come to symbolize in the text. The most famous of these giants is Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel in his attempt to reach the heavens. The inclusion of Nimrod, Professor Mazzotto suggests, is the first indication that the language is a central issue that Dante is looking to explore in this circle of hell. All but one of these giants are chained as punishment for their attempt to challenge the gods. Antaeus, the only unchained giant, lifts Dante and Virgil, transporting them from Circle 8 to the lake ice Cocytus in Circle 9. Circle 9 is inhabited by the misbegotten rabble of all rabble, Dante tells us, sinners whose action placed them with Lucifer in this world of ice. Immobility and pain inflicts these sinners, whose tears freeze over as they weep. Virgil describes the different regions of hell in Canto 11, including a description of fraud and treachery, in which he differentiates between the two, with fraud being placed in the 8th circle and treachery in the 9th. Take note of Virgil's definition here. Look at the different types of fraud that he defines and why he differentiates between the two. Looking at the different types of treachery, the sins of the leopard, will help you think about the contextual concerns that Dante was responding to. There is treachery directed towards your kindred, your country, your guests, and your lords. Consider the different political ramifications of each of these and why different sins are placed closer to Lucifer in the central circle of hell. Now, to revise the outline of hell and how the mythology behind it, how it was created, look at a brief video.
Hell is located beneath the visible world in a conical pit which descends right down to the center of the earth. The lower the level of hell, the more evil it is. The pit was formed when the angel Lucifer fell from grace and was thrown down from heaven and hit the earth. The pit of hell is the impact crater. Dante's vision starts in the dark wood on the edge of hell. With Virgil, he slips beneath the surface of the earth and descends into the Inferno. This is the best known part of the Divine Comedy, a dramatic journey through torture and misery. Past unthinkable evils where the wicked are punished forever. No class of society is protected from divine retribution. Cardinals and popes are as likely to be found in hell as prostitutes and thieves. Virgil guides and protects Dante as they descend.
Now, in Canto 32, we'll see that Dante explores the possibility for language to communicate different experiences. He calls on both high rhetorical devices as well as more lowly everyday language, such as mama and dada, the childish language he refers to in the opening lines of 32. In doing this, he looks at the way that language can be a mode of knowledge. And Dante's experiment involves combining these various perspectives in his work to think about how they respond to and how they can help represent the horrors of the hell he sees before him. Now, it's going to be a brief inclusion from a Yale University lecture that's going to look at this idea of perspectivism in the Inferno, and also look at the way that style can be a mode of language, a way of understanding. So I'd encourage you to think about the way Dante connects his subject matter with the style of language he's choosing to use.
Do you know what I mean by perspectivism? What we have read so far, perspectivism simply means the presence of viewpoints, various viewpoints, which one somehow manages to control. I know all viewpoints. In Dante, this is the case, the way the whole of Inferno is written. The perspective on styles. Dante uses all possible styles that I have been exemplifying for you here as we discuss the poem. He uses the courtly language and the courtly rhetoric of Francesca, the other court, the legal court of Pierre de Levigne, the court of let's say, the schools with Brunetto Latini, the language of the prophets. He uses all perspectives. It's the whole of the Divine Comedy is such a perspective. Dante uses this perspectivism, which I repeat, really means a way of assembling various points of view in the persuasion that this is what really he has. He's in exile in 1302. He has been traveling all over Italy, and he thinks that he can go on forging the language, the vernacular language of Italy. He will go on, just to go back to say other things about the De Vulgare Eloquentia I didn't say, he will go on writing about the proximity of the Romance languages. He invents this idea of Romance languages. He says that the way in which French, Provençal, Spanish, Italian are connected together, he says it's one particle, the way we use the C. Or when he talks about the Provençal, he says they actually call to say yes, they say "uck," which I guess is when they have to make an affirmative statement. So he goes on talking about the sea, the language of the sea, the way the language of the north. This is what the families of languages are being built together. So Nimrod, to go back to the text, the story of Nimrod and the story of Dante seems to be strangely very close, but there's more. Look at what he does, because it's so, the link with the De Vulgare Eloquentia is just extraordinary. Even this line that everybody thinks doesn't mean anything, Raphael, Mai Almec, Zabi Almi, if you look at it carefully, I'm really going to tell you something. It is an imperfect, there's one letter, anagram of a Hebrew line from the Psalms. And the reference to Suite of Psalms next will tell you that Dante is really giving the source. The line in the Psalm, Psalm 22, is Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. The fact that there is no exact correspondence only means that the editors have missed the point that they should amend the text. So it would be an argument for textual emendation. That's something that the philologists are very careful about doing, but they always welcome possibilities. This is really, it's an amazing, so he's using Hebrew. Because that's what he had said in the De Vulgare Eloquentia, that Hebrew, though this is an inverted, twisted language by the builder of the Tower of Babel, we are not supposed to understand it, and yet behind all confusion, there is still something intelligible. That's the argument. Behind all twisted appearances of things, there is a residue of intellect, of intelligent, intelligible, an intelligible message that is going to be given. What are these words, by the way? Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, because I'm going right past it very quickly in the belief that everybody will know it. These are the words, Psalm 22, they are the words that Jesus on the cross cites. Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? It's really the tragic moment, or the moment of the crucifixion, where the Son feels that he's completely abandoned, and that somehow the whole divine play, the whole divine order is no longer responsive to him. It's really the moment of the theological despair, let me call it, okay? And Dante, so that's, now, and Dante's aware that if Nimrod, that's what Dante, I think, is telling Nimrod obliquely, had he not been so stupid, he would have known, by using this kind of language, the way in which it would have been reaching heaven. You know, the way to heaven is the way to go down into humility and not up through the building of the Tower of Babel and the confusion of tongues. And then there is this whole...
Following on from this, I'd encourage you to look at the opening exchange of Canto 32. The shifts from high rhetoric to more lowly everyday language. The shift from pathos to bathos, and the effect this has. You might consider the way the use of heightened language engages the emotional pathos of the audience and encourages them to think about the emotional impact of the punishment and empathize to a degree with the sinners in hell, while moments of bathos dehumanizes these sinners and encourages the audience to see them for what they are, for flawed people, flawed humans who have sinned and are therefore being punished. Now, in comparing and contrasting this to The Road, you might consider the way that McCarthy looks at the failings of language when the world is pushed to a dystopian extreme, when the entire world has become a hellish landscape. The extract you can see on the screen looks at the way that the disintegration of the physical landscape is matched by disintegration of language and the ability to communicate the experience one has in this world. Okay, now we'll look at cannibalism in both texts. Cannibalism can be seen as a reflection of the breakdown of social and neighborly bonds. Not only does it break down the bond between yourself and your fellow man, but it leads, we suggest through a lot of the descriptions of the blood cults, to the dehumanization of yourself. Both the sinners in Canto 32 and 33 and the blood cults in Cormac McCarthy's The Road are described with animalistic imagery, suggesting that they have lost some innate sense of humanity.
Here weeping puts an end to weeping, and grief turns inward to intensify its anguish. Tell me your reason, and I promise, if you are justified in your revenge, I'll repay your confidence in the world above, unless my tongue dry up before I die.
The living brain of Archbishop Ruggieri is being eaten by Count Ugolino. They had conspired together to betray the town of Pisa. Ruggieri turned on Ugolino and locked him up together with his children. He barricaded the door and left the family to their fate.
I saw them all fall one by one as the fifth and sixth day passed, and I, but then gone blind, groped over their dead bodies. Though they were dead. 2 days I called their names. Then hunger proved more powerful than grief.
Now, it's worth pointing out that Ugolino's account implicates not just the Archbishop who has locked him in the tower, but the entire town who has conspired against Ugolino. And in doing this, cannibalism in this scene can be read again on a couple of levels. The erosion of society and neighbourly bonds, and the way that this leads to the destruction and corruption of one's own humanity. So the scene we see is an indictment not just on the Archbishop and Ugolino, but the entire city of Pisa. Now, the destruction of humanity, the dehumanization of the sinner is pretty clear in the language and the imagery Dante chooses to use. Bestial bite is a really vivid image that he gives us, along with the description of hungry teeth, the way a man with hungry teeth tears into bread. And the very violent imagery we're given accentuates this feeling of dehumanization. Later, you can look at the imagery of his teeth and the way he rubs his chin on the Archbishop's head. But in broadening that, we see Ugolino's humanity as well when he's able to tell his story. Dante offers that power to him. He says, "If you are justified in your revenge, once I know who you are, and in communicating his story, I'll repay your confidence in the world above, unless my tongue dry up before I die." Of his society. Now, there Dante is obviously making good on his promise. He's communicated Ugolino's sin of this scene. They've been implicit in locking up Ugolino and his children. Going on from that as well, we can reflect on Dante's political context and the way that he looks at the way different types of treachery can tear a community apart. So I'd encourage you to look back in detail at Dante's context, his political context, and the way that these scenes are a critique of his context and a warning to his society.
I fell, not into fire, but into a vast, frozen wasteland. The very center of hell.
Now finally, there's some depictions of the landscape that both Dante and Cormac McCarthy have given us. Each of these composers uses their setting quite deliberately. Dante's contrapasso of the Lake of Ice is that the people damned to this circle of hell have not shown warmth to others in their lifetime. While Cormac McCarthy, the desolate dystopian space of Earth that is now barren, is an indictment on humanity's and society's failure to care for the Earth in which we live. The bountiful Earth that has the potential to nurture, however, has now become completely forbearing and offering up no sense of sustenance or hope. So on that cheery note, we will wrap up. I encourage you to look closely at each of these extracts, look at a variety of texts, and all the best with your study.